Can you become a millionaire with as little as $5? Most people watching this video will say it's impossible. Where is $5 and where are millions of dollars? Most people have the idea that if you want to get to millions of dollars, you need at least to build successful business or maybe at least a successful career that will get you at least six figures, and over time you could be making millions of dollars. And you're absolutely right if that's what you think. But if you ask an investor, he will explain to you how you can turn $5 into millions of dollars. Because the key to getting rich isn't about working 24/7 for the rest of your life. It's about taking your money and putting it to work. You have 24 hours in a day and you cannot possibly work more than that. But your money can work 24/7 behind your back, making you wealthier and wealthier. But most people don't talk about what kind of things or investments that I have to buy so that I can calmly relax, so that my money keeps growing behind my back. Now you have a few options. One of the most popular options is of course real estate. And real estate is a great example because when people think about investing, they often think about real estate. First of all, house prices rise dramatically over a very long period of time. So real estate is not an option for most people because first of all, you need hundreds of thousands of dollars. Then you need to go to the bank to finance it, which is something that most people cannot afford. The second option nowadays people look into is Bitcoin or crypto in general. I understand the seduction that gets you to the Bitcoin because Bitcoin prices rise dramatically overnight. Today they're worth $50,000, tomorrow something happens and Bitcoin prices have crossed over $100,000. And I wouldn't be surprised if they cross $200,000, $300,000. And what fascinates me the most is when you see a crypto that comes out within a single week and then overnight it skyrockets by 1,000%, and everybody who's invested in that coin or created that coin becomes overnight millionaires. When you hear that kind of news, it's very seductive. You want to try your luck, and maybe, just maybe, this is the crypto that is going to make you a millionaire. Maybe this $10,000 that you're throwing into this new crypto that emerged yesterday is going to be the next Dogecoin, and it's going to grow to $2 or $3 million, and finally you can retire for the rest of your life and live of your investments. But let's be honest, that doesn't happen often, and you have to be extremely careful because crypto, even if we are talking about Bitcoin itself, is very risky. We don't know the underlying value of this crypto. Today they can grow significantly higher, tomorrow they can collapse, which is often what happens. Because if you look at the statistics, over 90% of the people who invest on those coins are losing money. A lot of times it's a pump and dump scheme where the people who created the coin or the people who started that coin or even the early investors will start massively buying that coin in order to attract a lot of attention. But once it reaches some heights to a few $1,000,000, for example, they start massively selling. The third option is the stock market. Now, a lot of people don't understand what the stock market is truly about. The stock market is a place where businesses can come and sell a portion of their businesses. And the great thing about businesses is that they constantly create value. So we can understand why would this business grow and this business wouldn't grow. So if you have, for example, a grocery store, what does a grocery store provide? It provides a value by bringing those goods and services to your doorstep. So it creates value to the client, and then the client pays money to that business for buying those stuff. And this business is going to grow bigger, which will have more money and can create more value and sell more stuff to the clients, making more money and growing even farther. The stock market is filled with thousands of stocks. How would I possibly know that this company is going to grow and this stock is going to fall? There is one easy character that you have to find out in any business. And if that business has that character, then it's most likely a great business. And that is a monopoly. So if it's a monopoly in any industry, you can be confident that you're investing in a really great business. On one side, it's really bad for employees. If you're working in Amazon, for example, they pay you very low wages, you're having very harsh conditions, and it's horrible, and you can criticize Amazon for as long as you want. But for the investor, it is great because the company is trying to reduce costs by underpaying their employees and maximize profits by overcharging their clients. It's great for the business owner, it's great for the investor, but it's really bad for the employees. Now, you can debate for as long as you want about the morality of it, and you can say, I'm not going to invest in businesses that are treating really badly the employees. But that's not how investors look at a business. Investors want a very reliable, great business that can consistently grow and keep making the money. Coca-Cola is a well-known brand all across the world, but it's not just one brand. Underneath, it has multiple other companies that are part of Coca-Cola. And if somebody will come and compete with Coca-Cola, what do you think Coca-Cola is going to do? They will come and they will buy it. Why? Because they don't want competition. You have Mars, which is a brand, and under them they have different kind of chocolate that they sell under this brand. Then you have PepsiCo that has multiple, maybe dozens of other brands that you probably don't even know that they're part of PepsiCo. What makes monopolies better than any other businesses is that they're very predictable. You're not guessing about what will happen to that business tomorrow. You know that they have already proven that their business model works. They have already proven to the world that there is huge demand for their product. They have already proven to the world that this is how much the product costs, this is how much they are going to sell it for, and this is how much in profits they can expect to be making. So if you're looking at the monopoly in any industry, you can predict their future profits, you can predict their future revenue, and you can predict their future valuations as accurately as possible. Now, if you compare that to a startup, a business that have emerged but hasn't built a real monopoly in that industry, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow because they don't have a proven business model. Tomorrow, a competitor could come and they can build an alternative business model that will be much more profitable, and that business is going to go down. The second great trait of a monopoly is that they can buy their competitors. If you look at Apple, they have an entire department that looks for really small startups that might be a threat to Apple in the foreseeable future, and they will try to buy that company while that startup is still a small company. Why? Because when they grow really big, they will become a real competitor. Now, every huge tech company has that. Every company that has a monopoly in its industry has a huge department that looks for these companies. So sometimes, you have this idea and you're building a really great company. You know that you cannot compete with Amazon, but your goal is going to be acquired by Amazon. Now, a really great example is Amazon and diapers.com. Diapers started selling diapers online, and they built a very great successful business model. So Amazon came to diapers.com and told them, listen, we're going to buy you. But they said no to Amazon. Amazon literally drove diapers prices to zero in order to drive them out of the business and then purchased them for pennies and made them part of Amazon. That is the power of monopolies. Yes, for the consumers, it might be really bad. Yes, for the employees, it might be really bad. But for investors, a monopoly is the type of investment that you want to be making. The third great trait of a monopoly is that they can outspend everyone else. So if you look at the stock and the business behind it has a monopoly in a certain industry, you know that nobody can come to that. Not a single investor would create a company that can outspend Google in their industry. Not a single investor can come up in that industry and outspend Coca-Cola in that industry, which makes it a very great, reliable business. Monopolies are also fairly valued compared to startups. So if you have Nvidia, which is also to a certain extent a monopoly, it's very easy to value it. Why? Because they have built a very new business model, and AI is a new thing that emerged in the last couple of years. Yes, AI has been around for probably 20 or 30 years, but real AI became mainstream in the last couple of years. So we don't know what to expect out of it. So we don't know how much real demand there is going to be for Nvidia chips in the next couple of years, especially when a company from China emerged called DeepSeek and proved to the world that you don't need those very advanced semiconductors in order to build the most advanced AI tools. But it's very difficult to overvalue a company like Coca-Cola that has been around for such a long time and proven how much real demand there is for their products. So you can actually make real great expectations and projections about their future profits, and you can give them a pretty fair valuation. Monopolies can also expand worldwide. If you have a small business that is not really a monopoly in the United States, they're struggling to get market share from Amazon. They're struggling to get market share from Apple. They're trying to get market share from Coca-Cola. But when you're a monopoly, you're not constrained by the boundaries of the United States. You're not like a US company. You're an international company, and you will be competing everywhere because you have the money to do so. You will go to Europe, you will go to China, you will go to Southeast Asia, you will go to Middle East, you will go to Africa, you will go to Latin America, you will go everywhere. So every single market is literally an opportunity for you to drastically grow your profits. So what are the great monopolies to invest in? So I will share with you 5 monopolies that I personally invest in, and I believe that they will continue to grow because they have dominated their industries. Google is a really great example. Over the last 5 years, the stock hasn't literally grown that much. Of course, it has grown much more than the S&P 500 by around 240%, which makes it a really great investment. But if you compare it to a company like Nvidia that has grown by thousands of percent, it's absolutely nothing. But when I invest in Google, I know for a fact that this is a company that is not going to collapse. Just look at the number of services they provide. Everything that I use on daily basis is provided by Google, starting from this video that you're watching on YouTube to Gmail to Chrome to search engine. They have a complete monopoly on the search engine, and because they're making so much money by selling ads online, they can provide so many services for free to everybody, which makes it impossible to break this monopoly. They're gathering data from everybody. When I use my Google Calendar, Google is collecting data about me. When I'm watching YouTube online, Google is collecting data from me. I don't expect Google to grow drastically by 100% over the year or two, but if you're talking over a period of 5 to 10 years, I can expect a growth something like that. And because we know how many services they provide and how their business actually works, their growth is very predictable. Their income is very predictable. 5 years ago, they used to make a little less than $200 billion. Now in 2024, which was last year, they have made over $320 billion. And the growth is very predictable. And as an investor, I can analyze the entire business and I can know how much the Google is possibly going to make over the next couple of years. Even their PE ratio is pretty good at 25, because when it comes to a tech company, a PE ratio of anything between 20 to 30 is fine. They're facing a very serious threat from ChatGPT because I see a lot of people using ChatGPT as an alternative to Google search. But because Google is a monopoly, they started massively investing in their AI projects. And now if you go and Google something, you can see that the Google AI is literally giving you answers instead of just having your search engine doing it as usual. My second favorite monopoly is Meta. And over the last 5 years, it has grown as much as Google by around 233%, which makes it a great investment actually. If you compare that to the S&P 500, for example, then I would rather be invested in Meta than the S&P 500, even though that Meta is part of the S&P 500. Not everybody calls Facebook a monopoly. But let's be honest, it's a complete monopoly because they have a complete control over all of the social media, not just in the United States, but literally all across the globe. They have purchased WhatsApp for $19 billion over 10 years ago. They have purchased Instagram for $1 billion back when the company was smaller. And now Instagram is valued at over $100 billion. And back then, when Snapchat came in and started competing with Facebook, what did Facebook did? They went to Snapchat and they offered to buy them. But they refused to sell themselves to Facebook, and they started a literal war against stories. They literally incorporated stories in every single product that Facebook has. You have stories on Facebook, you have stories on Instagram, you have stories on WhatsApp. Meta is not going to grow by over 1,000% overnight. It's not a startup. Yes, back in 2010 and 2012, it was growing substantially by 20, 30, 50% overnight. No, sometimes it even grew by 100%. But that kind of growth is no longer happening. And the reason that it's growing dramatically is because the value of the dollar is going down. So it's not always about Meta performing greatly. Back in 2023, when Meta was facing real challenges and the stock was going dramatically down, I was confident that they will actually fix all of their problems and the stock is going to go back again and will be growing. Why? Because it's a monopoly. Their revenues are very predictable as well. Over the last 5 years, you can see that every single year the revenues has been growing, and now it's at around $160 billion, which makes it one of the largest companies, not just in the United States, but all across the globe, making even Mark Zuckerberg one of the wealthiest people in the world. Another monopoly that I really like is Visa and MasterCard. Yes, it's not a single company. These are two different companies, but they control over 80% of the entire industry. If you look at any cards that you're using in order to pay for stuff, in 8 out of 10 cases, it's either MasterCard or Visa. And they have built such a huge infrastructure all across the globe that it's impossible for any company to jump in and start competing with any of those players. These two companies don't simply control the financial system in the United States, but literally every transaction all across the globe. They might not be making a lot of money out of every single transaction that is being made using MasterCard or Visa, but they take a small, tiny percentage out of all the transaction that comes from every single card that's being used worldwide. They have built a very reliable business model where they divided the entire market between themselves, and their income is growing consistently with every single year. The only threat that these two companies have is crypto. But as you can see that institutional investors are jumping into crypto and they want to control crypto. And if they control crypto, Visa and MasterCard might actually create something that will actually help them to have some influence over the entire crypto market. But that's of course something that's going to happen in the future. But for now, we know that these two monopolies have so much control over the financial system that I wouldn't bet against them. And if you look at their valuation and you do all of the analysis, you'll find out that they're actually fairly valued. Another great monopoly that I really like is Waste Management. This business doesn't attract a lot of attention, but what makes this business so insanely great is because their service provides and fulfills one of the necessities that every single person has, which is collecting garbage. You won't suddenly tomorrow decide that I no longer want my garbage to be collected. They might not be making a lot of money. Their business might be very capital intensive. And that's why you see that they're making a lot of revenue over here, but their profits are very slim. But even those slim profits actually makes the business very predictable, and you know that the business is going to continue to grow. And because the dollar is being devalued every single year, these are the kind of businesses that keep growing. These are the businesses that you know for a fact that provide essential services. Like just like Coca-Cola made Coca-Cola a necessity for a lot of people, like most people who drink Coca-Cola cannot exist without Coca-Cola. They literally became Coca-Cola addicts, and they go and they buy that Coca-Cola every single day. And that's what makes Coca-Cola such a great business. But Waste Management provides a service that we know, everybody knows that that service is essential to the survival of everybody. And one of the greatest investors of Waste Management is who? Exactly, Bill Gates. When he sold a lot of his actually stocks from Microsoft, he immediately started investing in Waste Management because he was confident that no matter what a crisis happens in the United States, no matter how big is the recession that is going to happen in the US, no matter how big the bubble that will happen in the entire world, people will not stop using the services that Waste Management provides. Their profits might be slim, but their business is very predictable and their business is extremely reliable. Now, another great investment is, of course, Apple. This is the greatest monopoly that the United States has today. Warren Buffett once said, Apple is the greatest business that he has ever seen, because they have built this ecosystem that once you're in, it's impossible to get out. Once you get an iPhone, you start using Apple services, from App Store to iCloud to Apple Music to different kind of services that Apple provides. And then you get yourself an AirPods. Why would you get AirPods? Because if you get anything else, it won't work properly with AirPods. And then you get yourself Mac, and then you get yourself an iPad, and then you start using all of these services. And suddenly you find yourself being trapped in this ecosystem that is being built by Apple. As a customer, you might complain about that because that is not fair. But as a business, that's a great thing to do because you know that you have this client and he is a very predictable client. You can sell to him anything you want. Everybody uses an iPhone. And guess what you can do? If you want to sell something to your clients and you're creating an app, you can push that app to everyone else who is using an iPhone. And we are talking about billions of people who are using iPhones worldwide. Apple has been going through a lot of crises in the last few years. And a lot of people criticized Apple for not being innovative, especially with their AI projects. It has a PE ratio of around 36, and some people might say that it's too high for a company like Apple. So it's debatable, but at least it's not like 50 or 60 or 70. At some point, I remember people used to buy Tesla stock when its PE ratio was at around 800. I think it was like Cathie Woods, who was very popular investor in Tesla when its PE ratio was at around 800. But nonetheless, 36 for a company like Apple, it's not actually that bad. Their revenue has been stagnating in the last couple of years, as you can see that at around $350 billion, probably almost $400 billion. But when you're that big, when you're making like $350 billion annually, it's very difficult for you to grow because you have actually dominated the entire market. Think about Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola doesn't grow that much. Its stock price doesn't also grow that much. The only people who are actually making profits from Coca-Cola are the people who invested in Coca-Cola back in 1980s and 90s when it was a much smaller company. But now, since they have dominated the entire market, it's very difficult for them to come up with something revolutionary. But with Apple, it's different because it's a technology company, and technology has this character that you can actually innovate something new. With drinks, it's much more difficult because once people like Coca-Cola, how are you going to convince them to move to something much better? Yes, maybe you can build a much better product with drinks, but with technology, it's much easier because technology has a lot more room to grow. There is obviously a risk in investing in monopolies because they can be broken up, just like AT&T or Standard Oil. But I don't believe those monopolies are going to be broken up today, because back when AT&T was actually broken up, the world was a completely different place. When Standard Oil was broken up, the United States was pretty much isolated from the rest of the world. And the world today is very globalized. These companies do not just operate in the United States, they operate worldwide. And the bigger they get, the more taxes they pay, and the better it is for the US government. So if the United States government is going to break up those companies, other competitors from China, Europe, and the rest of the world will outcompete US companies. Why? Because now US companies have less resources. Now they have to compete within the United States in order to get big enough. And that's why if you pay attention to Standard Oil, that was broken up into like 35 or 40 companies, those companies later on realized that it's much better for them to merge. So they have merged, and those 40 companies today are 4 companies that represent the entire oil and gas industry within the United States. So chances any of them will be broken up is very slim. But these are 5 monopolies that I personally invest in, and I continue to believe that they will continue to grow because they're very safe. They grow much faster than the S&P 500. But if you're really afraid and you don't know how to invest and you're not sure which stock should you buy and you have as little as $5, let's do the math if you can actually become a millionaire with as little as $5. If you take your $5 and you invest it in the S&P 500. Now the S&P 500 includes all of the monopolies that we talked about in this video because it represents the top 500 US companies that represent the US economy. So you have Apple, you have Google, you have Meta, and every other company that you can think about. You cannot expect out of it like 20%. All you can expect is 10% annually over a very long period of time. In some years, the S&P 500, like in the last couple of years, can grow by 20 or 25%. But other years, when there is a crisis, it can go down by 5 or 10%. And you have a really strong, great company, that company might not suffer during a financial crisis. And if you're investing $5 a day, that's $150 every single month. Over a period of 45 years, it is going to grow to $1.3 million. Most people spend $5 every single day on coffee or snacks. So you have a choice. Are you going to keep buying those coffees or snacks, or are you going to invest that money into the S&P 500, and by the time you retire, you will retire with at least $1.3 million. And the great thing about it is that you still continue to receive 10% annually, which is $130,000. So what is better, your Social Security or $130,000 from your investments? Of course, $1.3 million over such a long period of time is literally peanuts and not something really motivating for most people. But let's be honest, we are talking about just $5 a day. And now imagine what happens if you take investing seriously and you invest more aggressively and you actually learn how the market actually works. So if you want to learn how to get your first $100,000 in the stock market in the shortest period possible, make sure to check the description of this video. Thanks guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.